All right. Why don't we get started? I started the recording. Um, so first of all, everybody, welcome to this presentation on judging process, and it's meant for everyone. And just to introduce myself, I'm Pankaj Oberoi. I'm the head JA for the Chesapeake region. We also have Shelley on from First Chesapeake as well. So just sort of a couple of business things. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Shelly will try to find them or I will try and look at them. If you could also put your put in the chat your team number so that way we have a record sort of who's been here, that'll be really good. And we'll try to go through judging process. So if you go, let's see if I can get moving slides. All right. So what really the outline of this presentation is I want to just kind of go over a little bit of the first principles. You guys all know them, gracious professionalism, all those things. But really what I wanted to share with you sort of is what happens, both the responsibilities of people in the judging room, just so you all know what the roles are, how we handle conflicts of interest, and then really kind of going through all the stages of the judging process and showing you where the awards criteria and the judges' awards are. So that's going to be sort of the goal for this presentation. And I'm trying to explain as much as I can and be as transparent as possible. So what I really want everybody to realize is there's no real secrets in the judging process. It is all open. In fact, you'll be able to go online and see the judge's manual, uh, judge advisor's manual. They're all available to everyone. One of the things before we get started, though, is since there have been a lot of changes this season, the judge's manual and the judge advisor manual haven't been updated yet. So subtle differences may occur as we're going through the season. But the rule is to follow game manual. That is the ultimate truth in the awards. So if you have any questions, it's in the game manual and that gets updated every 2 weeks. So first of all, I'm going to start off with is gracious professionalism. As always, I think this is such a core tenet to First and everything about First. And it's a philosophy. It's doing your best work, treating others with respect. What I love about, competitions is seeing the teams work with one another, respect. And that really means, having a great time, being competitive, but sharing and caring. And what's really important is it's not just about the kids. So I know there are a lot of coaches on this call, and I'll throw in some advice as I'm going through this training for coaches is it should include the adults, their supporters, everyone at the competition, everyone that's involved in First, right? So it's great to cheer your team on. It's great to kind of go, be excited for what you're doing, but be respectful and kind for the other teams, right? Don't kind of go there and you show any negativity. Don't make people feel like they're not included or underappreciated. So, make sure that as you actually have your team members there, your people, your guests, I would actually encourage you to train your parents, your guests, sort of what First is about. And that's because it actually reflects on your team as well. There's no award for gracious perfectionism. It's required. It's sort of table stakes. But what I can say is part of the judging process, if there are people who see potential violations of gracious professionalism, that could come up in the judging process. And the reason I bring this up early is, it actually has, I've been in many judging rooms where someone will say something. We don't instantly assume that the worst or negative things. We will talk it through with people. We'll try to understand it, but it is important that your whole team is available there. It doesn't mean that you will be disqualified right away. The JA will kind of go investigate it. If it's serious enough, they'll come and talk to the coach, and they could be disqualified from awards. But one of the things someone's asked me, hey, if I got a red card, does that mean I've completely eliminated because it's not gracious. There's a lot of reasons to get a red card, so that have nothing to do with gracious professionalism. So it's not just an instantaneous thing. So I really do encourage you all, have a great time, be supportive of your team, but also all teams. Um, so as we go through the next part, I want to make sure that everybody knows what are the roles and responsibilities, because sometimes it's confusing, who's in the judging room, what do they do, what their influences are. So the first person I want to talk about is the judge advisor. So the judge advisor is there to supervise the awards process, right? They're there to oversee, to guide the judges, to make sure that the judging process is fair. It is happening at a pace that's at a good pace. It's happening with the correct integrity, and that resolving any conflicts of interest, right? The judge advisor knows the rules, definitions of the awards, resolves any disagreements or misunderstandings. You know, they get the feedback from other volunteers. They help the judges write scripts. They enter all the rewards. But the big part, the judge advisor takes no participation in any selection of the awards, right? And this is a really important thing, is that judge advisor is not a tiebreaker. That judge advisor is not sort of saying, well, I think we give it to this team, and guides them there. They don't participate in the team interviews, so they're not interviewing the teams. They're not doing pit judging. They are simply there to facilitate the process. And so it's really important to know that they play a very important role, but again, they're not part of the selection criteria. Judges are the people who elect the awards, and so their primary role is to decide which teams deserve an award based on a series of things that happen during the day. The pit interviews, the robot match play portfolio. And so there's actually a set of criteria on who is permitted to judge, right? So they must be 21 years of age. They don't have to have any prior experience in FIRST, right? So if you know of people who are within our community, engineers, it's a great way, non-engineers also. Actually, some of the best judges are people who just kind of want to work with kids or want to learn, and they can actually come. So you don't have to have FIRST experience. But there are sort of some trainings that they'll have to take. So what's their responsibility? They'll talk to the teams both at an interview, they'll review portfolios, they're then going to actually fill back feedback forms after their interviews, they'll watch matches, and they'll identify any conflicts of interest. So why do judges identify conflicts of interest? You may not know, what teams are out there. You just want to be able to know that you're all working on this fairly and working forward on it. So when we're judging, the judges are instructed only to consider information from the current events and can't consider information from outside of what they've seen, heard, or they may have observed in a previous event. It's really important that the judging process is about that day, that event. That means that, if a team has done really great previously, they don't take that into consideration. They have personal knowledge, don't take that into consideration. They've seen their website, can't take that into consideration. It is about what happens in that day. And so sometimes you hear someone says, well, this team did really great, but may not have done in another event as well, or perceived not to have done well. It just may be the information that was shared at that event. And so it's really important to realize it is the information that's shared that day at that event. And it's also relative to the other teams at that event. Now, the judges actually will select the top ranked teams. They will never interact with the students alone. So always, 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 they must be in a group of 2 or 3 judges, right? And then finally, what's said in the judging stays in the judging room. right? So they're not allowed to share information outside the feedback form. They do not provide any feedback to the teams of, hey, you did really well, or you didn't do good, you missed this question. I do encourage the judges to be supportive, right? So if someone says something, it's perfectly fine for a judge to say, hey, that was a great idea. Really appreciate you, sharing that or something, right? And so just to remember, there is no feedback other than the feedback form that you'll get from the interviews. I love one of the things that was said in the manual, which is the award winners are recognized as being a positive example of the award guidelines, not necessarily the best team, right? And so that's really important because there are so many great teams as you start judging, and they're getting a piece of information that day. Um, I don't know what the best team is. They often are kind of blurring together. So, I want to make sure you all know it's the best of what happens at that time by judges, and it is subjective. It's not, there's no rubric that says we add up the scores and all of a sudden you get this number of points and that's the winner. It is very subjective. So that's the roles of the judges. Now, there's also responsibilities for all the other volunteers, and we get feedback from other volunteers. I can tell you, as I'm a judge advisor, I walk around and I talk to the referees, the people on the field, other volunteers, and I ask them, are there teams that have gone above and beyond in gracious professionalism? I hear great stories, right? Those stories make their way into the judging room. They may or may not influence the decisions depending on, what teams they were said about. I can say that in several cases, match observers or, people who, we may or may not have match observers at all of our events. Those are people who just watch matches and provide feedback to the judging room. But what I can say is there have been times where I've been in the judging room where observations of gracious professionalism during the matches have put it over the top for a team. That just little bit that pushes it over. Also, seeing performance of a robot working pushes it over a little bit. So it's really, you need to be aware that information from all volunteers contribute to the award selection. So I will say this, since that really isn't, here's my little tip as a coach, right? Since you're being observed all the time and you see gracious professionalism everywhere, you do want to make sure your team is aware of that, they're looked at when they walk into the event, they're being basically observed by everyone. So one of the topics that I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual judging is conflict of interest, because this is one of the things that's really important. We want to make sure judging is fair and every team has an opportunity and there's no challenges to fairness and there's equality there. And so we ask that we actually have a judging guidelines for First Chesapeake. I have them at the appendix of this slide, and we'll send them out for people who are going to be judging as well as JAs. And we ask that everybody disclose their conflict of interest when they are actually volunteering to be a judge, right? And then also all judges will sign a conflict of interest form before they actually begin their service. So we know what affiliations they have with what teams. And in the judging room, if there is a conflict of interest, it will be written up on the board with the name of the person and the team. So what's a conflict of interest, right? We don't want people who judging at an event where their team, whether they're a mentor, a coach, a sponsor, or a relative, are competing at, right? So if you are a parent or a coach or a mentor and your team is competing, you can't judge at that event, right? If you're a relative of current participant, you shouldn't be judging at the events, right? And it may be that you say, oh, you know what, I can judge fairly, I can be subjective about it. But it's actually about the perception, right? And in fact, you may think that you're being fair, but you may judge your team harder just because they're there, right? So it kind of works both ways. And so we want to really define that conflict of interest, and it's those are pretty easy ones, right? If you're a coach, mentor, some things become a little bit more challenging if you are actually mentoring another team or another team is actually mentoring your team, right? And what does that mean? If you're working 3 hours per week, you really have an active role in that other team. If you're officially a mentor of a team, say your team is mentoring team X is mentoring team Y, neither one of them should be judging each other. And we have a rule which says a 3-year separation period is required, right? And we're really trying to hold this conflict of interest as much as we can. Now, occasionally there may be some cases where we may have to, by not having enough judges, or we find out a little bit later, what would we do? Think Award, Inspire Award, Engineering Inspiration. That's an FRC. I just copied this out. They can't be affiliated with any team. So as we get to maybe the state championship, the regional championship, we may have some conflicts, and that will all have to go through First Chesapeake or the head JA before we allow that. And in those cases, they won't be able to judge specific awards, and we will ask that those judges be excused from the room if their teams are up for any of the awards after the first period. So you must mention to the JA, even if you think that it's a small thing, what communications you have, teams you've mentored, sponsors, related organizations. Are you part of the same church, nonprofit? And one of the things that I want to say is I think it's the coaches' responsibilities to make sure the judges associated with their teams disclose their affiliation. Sometimes you have a parent who doesn't have it disclosed on their volunteer form for first, but coaches know, and you all know. So I'm going to really ask that you guys police yourself to make sure that this is a fair process, right? It's going to make it easier for all of us. And just because you know a team or know a mentor doesn't constitute a conflict of interest, but it's better to alert the JA just in case, right? Like it's really hard when you become a coach for a couple of years. You get to know everybody, get to know all the teams. That doesn't mean that you have a conflict of interest with them. The conflict of interest comes when you actually have a relationship in a mentoring or sponsoring way, right? And again, as we said, there may be special circumstances where we'll have to take some, but we're going to try very hard not to have to minimize the conflicts of interest. And we're going to ask that everybody who's judging will sign that judging form that First Chesapeake has. All right. So now getting on to the awards and the judging. So the awards are broken up into sort of a hierarchy where if you look at the top award, it is the Inspire Award, right? And that award is given to sort of the top, it's the top award that you have. And under there are other judged awards, which are broken up into 3 different categories. They're called Machine, Creativity, and Innovation. Those are about the robot. There's Team Attributes. That's about, sometimes people call them outreach, but it's connect and motivate. And then there's Think Award, which is engineering portfolio. Just to make sure everybody knows, the Inspire Award winner, first place, is going to advance. That's the first advancement for all events. So once you win first place Inspire at a qualifier, you can't win it again. So, you've advanced to the regions. Congratulations. We want to give more people an opportunity. So if you win first place Inspire, you cannot win it again until you get to the regional championship. And if you win it there, you will go to Worlds. If you won second or third place Inspire, you're still eligible to win first place Inspire. So let's say you went to your first qualifier and you came in second or third place Inspire. In your next qualifier, you are still eligible to win first place Inspire. All right. So I'm going to go into sort of this little corner here on what's the information that judges use and what's the process by which we go through our judged awards. Oh, actually, before I go there is, this year is a little different is we don't give out awards, all first, second, and third place awards for all categories anymore. Our tournaments are 24 or 36 team tournaments this year. And so we will be giving out first to third place Inspire, a first and second place Think Award, and then at the discretion of the JA and the judges, we'll determine whether we give a first and second place award for the other awards. But it's most likely we'll probably give out first place, and in the larger tournaments, we may give out a second place if it's deemed. And so, one of the things, I was judging just recently. So these aren't participation things, that these really mean something. And so getting a first place award really is meaningful, right? And so the other thing that you'll know is once you get an award, a first place award, you cannot get another award, another first place award. So if you get first place design, you can't get first place connect, right? I know I said in the opposite order because there's a hierarchy of these, but if you're getting first place think, you can't get first place innovate. So we're just going to give one award um, per team. The exception is you can get a second place or a third place nomination, and you could get that and a first place. So this is going to be sort of different for this year. So let's talk about how we're going to go through judging and sort of a representative day. So this year we're going to ask that all teams, not ask, we are requiring that all teams submit their engineering portfolio to Pit Admin at the latest by 7:40 a.m. And this is really important because there are changes to the process this year that we're going to do because there's now I think we have to get our judges' deliberation done sooner than we have had in the past year. And in fact, this schedule may have to be accelerated a little bit. We'll see after the first event. But
Pankaj,
yep,
before you continue, we did get a question
yep,
based on the last slide.
yep.
So the question is, can you win a lesser award, so like a second or third place, and win Inspire?
Um, you can win a second place and Inspire. You can only win one first place award. I will say this. Um, I'm going to encourage our judges not to give multiple team shout outs in second and third place because there's a thing called share the love. You want to recognize as many teams as possible. So even though it is possible, it is unlikely that if you win first place Inspire, your name will come up in second place in other places. It's possible though.
And that's different than what I think it's been in the past. Because I think in the past, if you were nominated for a second or third for lots of the other awards, then it was a indicator that you might be getting the Inspire Award. And so now whoever is selected for Inspire was great all round, had to have been considered for Think in order to move forward. And you may be going over this later. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm
yeah.
stepping.
I will go over how the Inspire and that's actually great. When I first got into FTC, what would often happen is a team would get second place Control, third place Innovate, second place Design, and by that time you knew who was going to win Inspire, right? It was also a little unfair because again, teams are so closely related. Um, you weren't actually acknowledging a lot of the other teams for the great work they did. And so actually this year we're not going to give out second and third place awards for the other categories unless the judging room deems it to be important to kind of recognize those teams. So what you see here is there is no, the asterisk means, you may or may not give a second place, connect, motivate, design, innovate, or control. The only second place that we will have to give out are Inspire and Think. So
Okay,
there will be in tournaments where we will just have first place for those 5 awards, and then first and second Think, and 1, 2, 3 Inspire.
got it. And then just one more clarification.
Yep,
So just as the example, if my team at a competition wins first place Motivate, then I know my team is not going to win first place Inspire because all teams may win only one first place award, including the Inspire Award.
that is correct.
All
So
right.
including the Inspire award, you can only win one first place. But if you got first place Connect, you can still win second place Inspire
Mm,
or third place Inspire. So the second and third place Inspire award can and often will be someone maybe who's won first place in the other categories.
and
But once you've won a first place award, you cannot win a first place award again.
and any others. And
That's
will, in the presentation, Pankaj, will you be going over what it takes, like the parts of the manual during this session about like you have to be nominated for these in order
Yep,
to have,
yep,
okay. I just want to
yep,
make sure you're going over that. I figured
yep,
you were.
yep.
Thanks.
We'll go over how we get to inspire as we go forward, right?
Perfect.
So I wanted to share with you sort of the nuts and bolts of the day because sometimes it's mysterious what happens and it shouldn't be mysterious. So you're going to submit your portfolios, and the first thing that's going to happen is going to be team interviews at 8 o'clock. So between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, there will be 20-minute slots where teams will visit and give an interview with the judges. The teams are only in there with the judges for 10 minutes, but they are at 20-minute slots. Once that set of interviews is done, the judges are going to return to the deliberation room to make an initial deliberation. And so let me go into that a little bit more detail. So, and this should say 8 to 10:30 is the team interviews. So judges will have the portfolios prior to the interviews, and I'm going to encourage them before the team comes into their slot, review the portfolio to better understand what the team has accomplished. And so both on the robot, maybe on outreach, that way they can actually ask more directed questions. So the better your portfolio is, the better you're going to get questions from your judges, and it's going to be more meaningful. There will be 2 to 3 judges per interview panel. So it will typically be one MCI, which is a technical, and one TA, which is non-technical. And each judging panel will interview 6 teams. So in most of our tournaments, we have 36 teams. We will have 6 judging panels, each interviewing 6 teams, right? So let's say I'm in judging panel 1, I'll see teams 1 through 6, whatever they are. Someone in judging panel 2 will teams 7 through 12, and so on and so on. New to this year is only one adult is allowed in the interview room, and there's no recording allowed. So now in the in game manual 1, A110 says no recordings allowed during the interview. All right. So each team will have 10 minutes with the judges in this interview. The first 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, is uninterrupted presentation from the team if they desire. So many teams come in, have a presentation, they either have slides, they have poster boards, whatever it is, and they will have 5 minutes. Now, the judges will keep a timer. At the end of 5 minutes, they will ask the team to stop. So wherever they are, and the remaining time up to 10 minutes, they'll have question and answer. So if you use all 5 minutes, there's 5 minutes left for Q&A. If you only present for 2 minutes, you have 8 minutes for Q&A. So it's really important that we try to keep it fair for every team to have the 10 minutes. So I'm going to be asking that the judges be fairly strict on the 10 minutes. And the 10 minutes actually starts once the judges say, yes, please go and start. In past, it was once they walk in, or some places it says once you walk in, time starts. Time will start when the judges say your 10 minutes starts, and then they can get started with their presentation. Now, in between in between interviews, the judges have 10 minutes. They are going to fill out the feedback form and take notes on the team. This feedback form is just check boxes. Just so everybody knows, that feedback form is not used during our final deliberations. It is not used to give out awards. It is used to give feedback to the teams, and it's just it's a bunch of check boxes, and there's no written review back to the teams, right? And I want to make sure that's really clear because I've heard sometimes, I don't understand, we didn't win an award, but I got checks for outstanding and everything. Well, that was actually what the interview went through, but you'll see it's more than just the interviews. Now, each judging panel will rank the teams and give 2 to 3 for each award. So, for instance, in judging panel 1, we'll nominate the top 2 or 3 teams for think, for motivate, connect, inspire, not inspire, other than inspire 2 people. And so they're going to start ranking them as they're going through the 5 minutes, and then they're going to use 5 minutes to prepare for the next team. So the 20 minutes goes very fast for the judges. It's basically 5 minutes to review the last team, 5 minutes to prepare for the next interview, and 10 minutes. So these 2 hours are pretty important, which is why we can't fall behind. Now, once the judges are done, they're going to come back, and each judging panel is going to nominate 2 teams for each award except Inspire. They don't nominate Inspire at this time because Inspire is collected based off of um, uh, all the awards. Now, a team can be nominated for multiple awards at this stage. So you could say judging panel 1 could nominate team 1 for multiple awards, but only 2 teams per judging award panel. And this is really important because, again, it depends on the judging panel and who who else is in your judging um, uh, section, basically, and how you're getting pitted against them. So that initial deliberation, if we get 2 from each room or from each panel, is going to produce 12 teams nominated for each award according to the criteria, right? And in a very special case, I would say the JA may allow a third from a team, but I'm going to really discourage it. They have to make a really strong case for a third, because you're going to see these 12 teams, you've basically cut down the number of teams to a third of the teams for each award. And we have a nice spreadsheet. Oh, I don't have it here. I forgot to do. Hang on, I'm going to try and see if I can recover. I actually had an example of it, but I did not. Let's see if I can actually pull it up real quickly. So we have a spreadsheet that we actually use to, and Joe did a great job of creating this spreadsheet. Unhide. All right. Let's see if that does it. Which demonstrates this. So what happens is you can sort of think panel 1 nominates 2 teams, panel 2 nominates 2 teams. We basically will get 12 teams from for each of the awards, right? And once we get those 12 teams, the next phase of our judging starts. All the judges are now rearranged into new groups. They're award panels. So for instance, I will take all the people who have technical and break them up into 3 groups, one for control, one for design, one for innovate. I'll take the rest of them and break them, one into connect, one into motivate, and then one for think. So for the 6 awards, we'll now have new panels. And this is where we will have pit interviews. So here's the interesting thing. Matches will start immediately after opening ceremony, and immediately after opening ceremony, the judges will be able to go and start talking to the teams. They may be encouraged to go talk to a couple of teams, watch a couple matches before lunch, break for lunch, but really they have until 2:30 to finish this phase of the awards deliberation. And so each team gets interviewed to get information about that specific award. They're going to spend 5 minutes with each team in their pit, practice area, or in the queue. This is highly stressful for both sides, just so everybody knows. The um, judges are trying to get interviews for people, and the teams are focused on the game. And so a lot of times people are not in the pits, and there are challenges with getting them connected. And I just experienced this. I was just judging at First Global, and this was really hard to figure out how to get those connections. And so we actually came up with a really good way there where we left a little note and we said, we will be back at this time and we'll be able to meet with you. And I think it works both ways. If a team's not available to speak, just put a little sign at your pit that says, we will be back at this time, we're out to lunch or whatever it is. So make sure that people are aware of where you are. Um, Judges will also be watching matches to get information, right? So they may be watching matches and come up to you at the end of a match and start talking to your team. So here's my tip for teams. Have someone at the pit all the time, or keep a sign about where your whereabouts are. Really important. This is a great use for adult mentors and parents.
And
So, yep.
I just want to chime in. New this season that First Chesapeake is making sure is in all the pods and in the judging cases is we've made pre-created sorry we missed you cards so that judges can leave that in a pit if they come by and no one's there, so that you as a team know when the judge is swinging back by.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, to have that it creates a little less stress if you know that the judges are coming, as opposed to, oh my God, I missed the judges here. They're never going to find out. But I will say, by 2:30, my judges have to be back in the room to deliberate and give me their final number. So really, they're probably going to be done at 2 o'clock. So I would say have a parent or a mentor there. We've always had it in my past teams. Um, but they can't be involved in the judging process. So they can't talk. If a team's not there, the adult mentor or parent can't tell the judges anything, right? They don't count. I would also give you another tip that the judges that are coming during pit judging don't presume that they know what was presented during the interview. So this is a little bit tip that um, you may want to keep is, hey, I've got to make sure that I understand what the judges know or what they don't know. So just present all your pertinent information about what they're asking. We're going to try and get every team to get a pit visit, even if they were not nominated for award. So this is one of the important things is just because you got a pit visit doesn't mean you're up for an award, right? But we want to make sure that everybody gets a visit. Part of this whole experience is to create a positive interaction between judges and teams. Now, when they're done, the award judges will rank order the teams that they were assigned. So remember those 12? They're going to take those 12 that they got. Let me go back a few slides. So for Think, they're going to take these 12, and their goal is now to rank order the 12 from 1 to 12. Now, you don't have to go all the way to 12. Since we're not giving 1, 2, 3 for all awards, we're going to actually ask for the top 5. So they're going to rank order the top 5 and then loosely ranked 6 through 12. And here's where it becomes really important is you'll see in the rest of our judging process, when we go for Inspire, you have to be nominated for multiple awards. And that's where it becomes really important. And knowing where you're ranked will influence Inspire. Now, at the regional championship, hopefully you all will get there, but not everybody will make it. But we have 2 divisions. It will run a little bit differently. We're going to have 2 divisions that are run independently. And then at the end, as they find their award winners, we'll take the top candidates from opposite divisions and we'll create an overall winner. but we'll cover that when we get to the regionals. So this is what that looks like. So for Connect, we'll get a rank from 1, in this case it was 1 to 9. Motivate, we got 1 to 9. And now we'll be able to see how the teams were ranked by each of the award judging panels. So then finally, there will be the final deliberations. And what that means is we will now take the top 4 Inspire winners. So Inspire rule is that you must have at least 1 MCI nomination, 1 TA nomination, and nominated for the Think Award category. Right? So what that means is if your team does not get nominated for Think, you're not eligible to win the Inspire Award. If you have a nomination in Connect, but you don't have a robot nomination, you're not eligible for the Inspire Award. So this is where we actually, as a group, will then look at this and say, where were teams nominated? So this team's, and we have a nice thing is 610 was nominated for Connect. They were second place there. They were 8th over here, but they didn't get nominated for Think. They would not be eligible for Inspire, right? 17774 was nominated for Think, first place, 7th place in Connect, and 6th in Design, which means that they are eligible for Inspire. So the JA will facilitate the discussions for selecting Inspire, but does not partake in the final decision. So they're not going to actually go and say, hey, this is our Inspire winner. They're going to facilitate. The judges will take a look at all the teams that are eligible, and we'll take the top 4 teams that are eligible for Inspire. And basically what the JA will say is, I'd like people to nominate who they think should win Inspire and justify why. And usually what happens in the judging room, someone feels strongly for one team or another, and there's a discussion that goes on, and we go through and work out the merits and let them talk it through. And for the most part, you get a clear winner or you get a clear 1-2, and you talk through the merits of the 1 or 2, right? At the regional championship, we'll have a separate Inspire panel. We won't talk about that here very much. The JA tries to get a unanimous decision. Actually, in most of the times that I've been a JA, what happens is you'll get a huge majority, and there'll be a few people that sort of say, well, I really wanted this other team. And I will usually ask, would you be comfortable with this other team winning since it's a large majority? Usually they say yes. So I have gone to voting a couple times, but typically haven't used voting very often. It's usually a clear winner. And then the judges can nominate a Judge's Choice Award. And I won't talk much about this because we're running out of time, but it is where it represents a team that's done something that's not represented by one of the awards categories. So again, oh, sorry, I did have this. This shows an example of the awards, the Inspire nomination. You can see the spreadsheet is really nice. You can see 17774 was nominated for 3 awards. It had team attributes, MCI nomination, yes. You can sort of see that 8479 did not have MCI, 21524 did not have team attribute. And so you basically have 3 teams that are eligible. The green one here, 21587 and 19876. So this is where it's really important. If you go all the way to the back, and this is your initial panel at the interview had to have nominated you to get into that top 12, right? And then in that top 12, that they're going to be ranked, but really the top 5 are really ranked, while the bottom 6 to 12 are loosely ranked. So when you want to be up for Inspire, you kind of have to get that right from the beginning. And that's one of the things that people don't always recognize, that it is all 3 criteria for Inspire. All right. I think this is, Shelley, what you were referring to earlier.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that we did cover that, because I think for some coaches, Even ones who've been around for some time don't realize the importance of the portfolio and the Think Award to the awarding of the Inspire Award. So this is great.
Yeah, and what this clearly shows is if you aren't nominated for Think, you are not going to get nominated for Inspire. And actually, I will say a couple of judging rooms, sometimes we get someone who goes, oh man, that person was really great. They had a great robot. Their Think Award worked great. And then you realize they have no team attribute award, right? So you look at 21524, they had a great design. They're doing really great in the robot. They were nominated for Think, but they didn't do anything in Connect and Motivate, right? And so this is an interesting, I don't know where this is one of Joe's old things, which it's an amazing spreadsheet. They use it now, I think, worldwide. But he did a great job of putting this together. So, I can't say enough. I'm going to talk a little bit about the awards and the portfolios, and I'll try and wrap this up a little quickly. But portfolio changes for this year is the portfolio is not required for all awards. It's only required for Think, Control, and thereby Inspire, right? So if your team does not submit an engineering portfolio, you can still win Connect, Motivate, Design, and Innovate. It'll be hard, I think, but it is possible. It is legal to do that. The portfolio is a cover page plus 15 pages of content. And I really want to clear this up, right? Cover page does not include information. So if you said, oh, in our cover page, we included, who the team was, it's not an extra page. You get 15 pages. If you have more than 15 pages, the judges are told to ignore everything beyond the 15th page. We got portfolios a couple of years in a row now. I've seen cover where you get 25 pages or 30 pages, and they just have to stop there. I would highly encourage everybody to have, well, they have to have their team number on the cover page. I would highly encourage them to put it on every single page because, one of the things is that if you don't have it on every page and a page falls out, where did that come from? Different for this year is the software and control information should be included in the portfolio. There is no separate award submission for control this year, right? And this is a great change because you'd always ask the team, did you do a control award submission? And they're like, oh yeah, we forgot. Now it's included in your portfolio, right? We do not review links in the portfolio. So if you say, hey, go to my webpage, see this, or go to this, judges are instructed they cannot review links in the portfolio or any online material. So the only information that the judges have to support the team is the portfolio and those 15 pages, right? And you can give them extra handouts, but they are not allowed to use those handouts in the judging process. So you go, here's a portfolio of 15 pages, and oh, by the way, here's a handout for this, and here's a handout for this, and here's a handout for this. You can't do it. And I would say make it easy for them, have it stapled and bound. So there was a question of what is the control award? Sorry, is that?
It's what is the control information?
Control information. So sorry, it's software and sensors and how they use their sensors to control their robot.
So in the past, it was a separate sheet that people had to remember to submit. And now anything you have inside your portfolio with regard to sensing and control systems would ultimately be used to inform judges on whether or not you're a candidate for the control award.
That's correct. Actually, I'm going to go through the awards very quickly. So I didn't spend a lot of time. I don't want to read these things. I actually put snippets from the game manual. Section 6.2 has all the awards in here, and there's always a description. And then new to this year, which I think is great, is required and encouraged. And what I can tell you is these aren't necessarily, I mean, this will likely be turned into some sort of rubric or some guidance for the judges over the course of the season. It hasn't come out yet, But whatever we do from the first qualifier, we'll continue and be consistent throughout all of our qualifiers. So, um, but this is great for the teams to sort of follow. And if you look at it, the Think Award, so actually I'll just go through this. Inspire, you can sort of see required is Machine Creativity Award, Team Attribute Award, and Think Award. These are the three criteria that need to be there. And you must have a portfolio. The Think Award, same type of thing. You know, you can sort of see it here. I won't read these things. I really encourage you guys to go read them. If you have questions on them, we'll share where you can actually ask questions. Some questions that do come up quite a bit is connect and motivate, right? So what is connect and what is motivate? And it's actually a little bit clearer. Connect is outreach to the STEM community. So where the team is actually getting information from the STEM community, recruiting, seeking mentors, planning for goals, how the team learns. It's a real team has a clear plan and identify steps to achieve their goals. And motivate is outreach to the community. So it's where they're trying to put things out, bring new members into FIRST, but it's also about how the team organizes themselves, how they embrace FIRST values, how they market their team. Innovate and design are ones that get sort of wrapped together, right? And it's important to read this. Sorry, innovate could be a subsystem or the whole part of the robot. And it's about a creative out of the box thinking. And it's about the design of that. So what's interesting is the design award, people think that's the design and engineering process, but the design and engineering process is actually part of think, right? It's a little confusing because you would think, oh, they had a great design practice, but this is actually demonstrates industrial design principles and a balance between form, function, and aesthetics, right? You must have a design engineering process, but that's part of think, how you go through the development. So again, read these two awards very carefully to see the requirements for your team. And then the control, someone asked about the control. I put this in a little bit more because you must have a portfolio. It talks about the hardware and or software control components, right? So how did you overcome some challenges with making it easier for humans? You know, you must have one or more hardware control solutions to improve robot functionality. And you can sort of see what are the things that you might use. And here's actually use of engineering process to develop solutions, hardware, sensors, algorithms. So this is actually a good update to the control award in my mind.
Pankaj, somebody asked with regard to control, which I think you covered some of it there. It seems that there's a great emphasis on using sensors, but sometimes it's more consistent to do things without them. Is there a bias towards using sensors for control? For example, using an April tag is not always the most accurate way to position yourself.
Right.
Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I think there are lots of people who have won control using simple sensors and algorithms, right? I think just this is not as a judge, advisor, or anything, but I think as having reviewed a lot of teams, you know, you don't use April tags, but you could use encoders on your motor. And so an encoder is a sensor. So one of the things teams forget is they actually use sensors quite often. Move to position for a motor is using a sensor. It's using an encoder. So I would encourage them to talk about how they're controlling things. Um, Also, how it makes it easier for the human to do things. So if there are things that are automated, like I do this, 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 and it's automated with a button, that's a solution. There's no bias. Like, I don't think there's a bias that says I use 25 sensors and that's going to win the control award. In fact, I know from experience that if you say you do 25 sensors, as a judge, I go, I want to know what those 25 sensors are and exactly why you needed 25 of them and what you find out is a lot of teams don't use all 25. So I think there's a right balance between none and overdoing it.
Thank you.
All right, and so one of the things that I wanted to highlight also that is new, there are specific terms. This is actually one of the places where I think teams aren't aware of, and I'm going to encourage our judges to do. A lot of times, we have high performing teams or people go, hey, you know what? I started 50 FLL teams, right? Or I'm mentoring 6 FTC teams. There is specific terms and definitions, and there's a document here under First Inspires that I think you should make sure that if your team is going to talk about outreach, how they supported teams, what they're doing, they're really well defined. So mentoring has a very specific meaning in First, right? Just because you answered an email on a Discord doesn't mean you've mentored the team. You've assisted them, but you haven't mentored them. Starting a team really is specific. You've actually helped them through the registration process. You've helped fund them. You've supported them through the season, right? So it's really important that if you're going to start using these terms, that we're consistent with it. And this is about the third year we're using these terms. And I can say that most teams don't know about it. Even the more advanced teams don't know about it. I really would like people to start using it. And I'm going to encourage the judges to review this.
Pankaj, I think it might be worthwhile to also mention here that because some of these words I think we use in our community, even if it doesn't go with the definition that first puts in the manual. And so if you use a word like start or assist, it's important that you be familiar with what that means in the manual because a judge would likely ask follow-up questions in order to learn more about how you started or assisted in
Yeah,
order to really understand what you did during your season. And if the students aren't able to answer those questions successfully, then the judges may interpret that as a use of a word that maybe wasn't the most appropriate word to use.
correct. And I think a good example of that is, again, it's often in the team support definition. Someone says, I've mentored an FLL team. I can tell you as a judge, I will say, what does mentoring mean to you? Right? So a common question I will ask a team is they say, oh, we mentored 12, like I've judged at World and someone said, oh, we mentored 20 FLL teams. And I would say, what does mentoring mean to you? And this team happened to say a great answer. Well, in our school, we host every Thursday, 20 teams come. We have a big work spot. I go, okay, now I understand that they actually on a weekly basis are working with these 20 teams, right? As opposed to, someone who comes back and says, oh, you know what? We actually hosted a 1 day seminar and 20 teams showed up, right? Both are great, by the way. I don't discount either of those, but it's just the judges will ask questions based on these terms.
Mhm. Thanks.
Um, there was another thing that came up last year, which was use of artificial intelligence. And it is okay for your teams to use artificial intelligence. I think they just have to actually acknowledge it, right?
Right.
Like, so don't worry, if they're using ChatGPT or they're using help somewhere or another, all good. And then what I would say is there's a judge's manual. Um, I would highly encourage that you go to this manual. It has not been updated yet. I'm hoping they will. But in that judge's manual are sample judges' questions that judges typically ask. So as a coach, I usually have my team know, hey, you're likely going to get these questions. Do you know how to answer them? Right. And we will probably be creating award specific questions for our judges, given that there's been a change in the judging criteria this year, and there's some changes in definitions. So we'll kind of have that before the first qualifier, and we'll train our judges on that as well. Other resources, First Chesapeake has a Slack channel that you can join. And so if you have questions, there's an FTCJ questions to ask questions that'll be clarified by me, Joe. We have an FTC judges channel for judges. So if you're going to judge, we ask that you join those channels. Have your parents and mentors sign up for judges events. Not your events because you can't because of conflict of interest, but this is a great way for your team to learn the process. I think I explained this in fairly large detail, probably more detail than people wanted, but when you go through it, you really get to understand the importance of the initial interview, the importance of pit judging, the importance of knowing how to address questions. So I would highly encourage people to sign up as judges. And then I put a link to the judges manual. I saw that Shelly kind of did that. And we'll have judge specific training for each of the weekends of the qualifiers. So going into each of the qualifiers, we'll have judge training as we go through there. And with that, I apologize that I'm a little over. I tend to get excited and talk a lot of detail because I think it's really important to have as much information available and transparency. So I'm willing to take any questions, or you can reach out to me or Shelly or Joe. So I'll open it up to any questions that you guys might have.
It looks like lots of people are very thankful and that it was a very good presentation. Lots of good information. Not seeing any questions come through. I just want to say thank you to Pankaj for all of his hard work in creating the PowerPoint and making this available to teams. We did not do this last year. And this is a new endeavor in order to make things more transparent and make sure people know what to expect. And thank you for all of you who attended. It's going to be a great season. Keep getting out there and recruiting for us for all the upcoming events. And we will keep being available to you to answer questions as they come up. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.